Hello everyone, it's Silver, and this is Varlet. Yes, that's actually how you say it. Varlet is a very old word meaning attendant, like a squire to a knight. This makes sense with the plot of the game as your character is an alternate to the president of a school guild. It can also mean like a scoundrel, a rogue. This definition is entirely Shakespeare's fault, as he liked to use the word as an insult in some of his plays. This comes to us from Furyu, who often make the sort of medium-budget JRPGs and things. This particular team previously made games like Monark and the Caligula Effect 1, so their lower-budget but interesting mechanics formula is well known among niche JRPG enjoyers. Their games often have a social element, a la games like Persona, but Persona also has a tremendous budget in comparison, so it isn't the best way to compare. In this case, the game is all about things like the spirit to evolve and change within people, as well as the proliferation of social media and how it can be hijacked to nefarious ends, relying on raw emotion to corrupt others. It's a lot like their previous titles in that it has some neat ideas as well as some shortcomings that keep it from being as great as it could be. This is the kind of game that you dig through with the knowledge it has imperfections that you're going to find, but still overall have a positive experience if you got into it. Visual presentation is always a bit interesting with these guys. They don't have the budget to make super photorealistic worlds or hyper slick and stylized creations like Persona. Instead, they usually aim for the middle, with some ground being made up by the fact that they have lots of visual effects and themes that gives things some extra spice. When you don't have the budget to make ultra high quality assets, you can instead choose to create a grounded presentation that'll have strong pops of color and stylization on top of it at points. So in regards to the visuals here, we have a very traditional Japanese high school aesthetic, with nothing much out of the ordinary, except in certain areas where the tone and art style suddenly shifts into these areas called glitches. Unlike the more flat colors of the school, these areas use neon colors and lots of stylish effects to draw the eye. Each glitch has its own visual theme, from graffiti-filled subway stations to blood-soaked gothic castles. This means that during the normal gameplay, things will look quite basic, with acceptable texture quality and no real effects layered on. But when you visit the glitches, you'll be surrounded by a neon world full of monsters and floating architecture. This split does help to keep the game visually fresh, and adds in some much-needed variety. After a quick walk around the school, you'll see all there is to see, and it'll all look rather basic. It's a perfectly acceptable art style. It doesn't stand out in any way, though. You'll be interested to see the next glitch theme in each chapter, because all the variety comes from these. It also means that since you'll be visiting each glitch several times, the current theme will eventually get old, as once you've seen it once, it doesn't really change. Luckily, you don't spend so much time in each one that they have a chance to get really boring, but there's only so many combinations of the hallways and rooms you can use for each theme. Character art is quite good. The in-game models for characters look nice and have a decent amount of animation to keep them moving. The hand-drawn character portraits, though, are where the best of the art is, in my opinion. Plenty of characters have these animated portraits. Obviously, all your party members do, but there are also quite a few side characters that get them. These portraits look great for everyone, and they take the 3D models and show more detail to fill out how that character is supposed to look. They're also quite expressive, which helps to add some extra tone to the conversations, and they usually match the mood of the voice acting very well. Speaking of the voice acting, I think it's actually quite good. I don't speak Japanese, but I can still hear things like tone and inflection, and the actors are clearly giving a solid emotional performance. Even though this is a more budget production, there's a surprising number of voice actors, with even many side characters getting their own. There are also lots of lines. You'll find that all main story scenes are fully voiced, and plenty of incidental stuff as well, like character bonding scenes and battle quotes. The amount of voice acting here is helpful because it prevents the soundscape from getting too quiet and feeling sterile, something that budget RPGs can sometimes struggle with. The interface is also an important part of a JRPG's presentation. This genre is very menu-heavy, and you'll spend a lot of time in various menus, so it's helpful when they're designed well. The menus in this game are fairly minimalist, with the character info menu having a nice large character art piece for each party member. It looks great. Most of the menus present things like stats and numbers in very simple ways, which, while not super stylish, does its job well and doesn't make the menus a chore to use. Things like battle menus always display relevant numbers and details clearly and have a nice, minimally stylized appearance. I think the menus in-game do their job pretty well, and although they don't have loads of stylishly nested details, they do at least function well, and that's really all I need from an RPG. The music is a bit of a mixed bag for me. The tracks that play around school are often quite generic and don't tend to stand out much, but the music inside Glitches is quite nice. The real-world music can sometimes have a nice, relaxing vibe, especially the music in social venues like the cafe or the mall. I think these are the best of the real-world tracks because they capture that cozy student life feeling. I'm talking about the same feeling that things like the Juness theme in Persona 4 have. But most of the music that plays while wandering around school is a bit too flat and generic to have that same vibe, so you'll really be looking towards the outer areas to get it. There are some nice anxiety-inducing tracks that play in school when bad things are happening in the story, and they switch things up. Overall, the music that plays in story moments can be pretty okay. In Glitches in battle, though, it definitely improves. Each glitch has its own theme that's related to the visual theming of the dungeon. This means that the visuals and music always make a nice atmospheric match while dungeon crawling. The themes the music covers are just as varied as the appearances of the glitches themselves, so everything from a more electronic idol feel to hip-hop while surrounded by street art. The battle themes are nice and upbeat, with the appropriate feel for the idea of battle in a space in between reality and VR, basically. The tracks that stand out the most for me, though, are the boss tracks. They each take the music for each glitch that they're the boss of and twist it into a more intense and threatening version of itself. So the idle music-themed glitch has a boss that uses a harsher electronic version of that upbeat, happy music and turns it into something evil-sounding. I think this is the best way they could have gone about boss music for dungeons that have such a heavy thematic sound already, and it adds a lot to the big battles. Gameplay here is split between two halves, the school and social elements and the dungeon crawling. Easily the weakest part of the game is also something it makes you do very frequently, which are the SSS activities days. Your party makes up a school guild called the SSS. It's a student support guild geared towards solving student problems and secretly closing glitches and rescuing people. On most days, you'll have an afternoon segment to do SSS activities. These will plop you down into the school courtyard and give you a list of tasks to complete. You'll need to get a certain number of likes to continue, and have a few tools to do this. You'll have 3 different AR ad posters you can put up anywhere there's an empty frame. You can also scan the area for dropped items, and AR notes that are left around the place. Doing all of these things grants you likes, and when completing objectives like pick up 2 items or put an ad in the arts course building and stuff like that, you'll get a burst of likes. You will also come across glitches while scanning. These will act as mini dungeons that have some chests and enemies, and also are sometimes necessary for completing student requests for more likes. There are also optional student conversations you can listen to marked by orange speech bubbles, and those are kind of neat. You don't have to view them, but the cool thing is these aren't just random blurbs, but actual mini storylines. Each day you go out and listen to the same students to get the next part of their story, and some of these go for a long time, like these students dating a mysterious girl that has dozens of entries spanning many chapters of the game. I think these are cool because they make the student body feel more like a character. They could have easily made these random repeating phrases, but they didn't. Even though you never have to see them, they do add a little extra something to the experience of helping people around the buildings. The likes you get will contribute to a star rating for the SSS. From what I can tell, this only affects the amount of money you get as a stipend from doing these. These are unfortunately very repetitive, and after doing like 2 of them, you'll have seen and done pretty much everything except for the student conversations. It wouldn't be too bad if you only rarely did these, but you usually have around 5 of them per chapter, which is way too many. There's really no reason to make the player do these so frequently except to pad out the runtime with boring and repetitive tasks. These can really drag the experience down with how many of them you have to do, but if you stick with it and get through them, you may get to the better parts of the game. The dungeon crawling is pretty good. You enter glitches and walk around very linear halls that will open up into rooms with a wider layout and several things to do. This does mean that the dungeons are unfortunately very linear with no real exploration or optional paths, but it also means they're a somewhat compact design that doesn't try to pad itself out with overly large layouts meant to have you walking around in circles for a while. There's a surprising amount of light puzzle solving in the dungeons as well. They'll open up into big rooms with enemies patrolling everywhere and various things for you to manipulate to get through. There are gaps you can cross by projecting a 1 space long bridge over them. There are colored blocks, some solid and others transparent. There will be a switch or switches around the environment sometimes to reverse which blocks are which. There'll be some chests around to grab and invisible enemies to scan for, as well as uncrossable barriers that you have to defeat certain enemies to bring down, but there's no indication as to which enemies are linked to which barriers, so you just have to experiment. There are also these purple enemies that I don't understand. In every room, there's one enemy with like a purple aura, and this enemy will respawn after you defeat it after a few seconds. None of the other enemies in the area respawn, but they don't really give you anything special. They're usually positioned in a place that's difficult to get to, so that makes them look like a reward, but fighting them seems kind of pointless. They don't give you special drops or multiplied experience or anything like that, and I really don't understand why they're there. You may think, well, they're obviously there for grinding, right? Since all the other enemies don't respawn and these ones do, they're there in case you need to grind up your characters, which maybe that might be what they're for, but the thing is, all of the purple enemies are always a significantly lower level than all the other enemies in that glitch, which means if you do want to use them for grinding, they give you almost no experience and money anyway. Combat is something you'll be doing a lot, so it's nice that it's decently complex and pretty fun. The left side of the screen shows a timeline, and when characters get to the top of it, they take their turn. Everyone has several different skills they can use, as well as a basic attack and a guard, and each of these puts you at a different place on the timeline, making you want to do things like interrupt enemies. Some skills can break enemies while casting, making sure that these skills go before that enemy will break them, and do good damage as well as cancel their attack and delay their next turn. There are also skills that can guard break enemies who are defending, and enemies also have attacks that can break your party, so you want to try and go before them to prevent that. To help this, you'll see those 4 yellow diamond shapes down there. Those are AP. You can use 2 AP to do something called an interrupt, which causes that character's turn to come up as soon as you press it. You can also get AP back by landing basic attacks and breaking enemies. You'll also notice that there's no MP gauge or anything like that. Skills are free to cast, but the only cost technically being how long they take to use. Battles will start out very simple in this game, but it's on a slow burn. As your characters level up and you progress the story, you'll unlock more mechanics, so it'll end up more complex, but it takes a while to get there. Once you get farther in, you'll have characters with support abilities and debuffs they can apply, as well as skills you can use to make your characters go together in a row, which links them together and empowers their skills if you can time it right. You'll also gain the ability to stun enemies by depleting that yellow gauge under their health bar, and then use a specific type of skill that binds stunned enemies. This enters something called Blitz mode, where you'll get several rounds to use various skills to greatly damage that enemy and build up a multiplier. Then you choose a character to do a fancy ultimate finisher that takes all that and applies it to one massive hit. The finisher is enough to kill basically any normal enemy several times over, but this mode is mostly used against bosses, and is usually the only way to defeat them expediently. Your main character will also eventually get a second form that you can use that is massively powerful and can easily solo almost anything, but its skills cost HP to use, which means you need to be a bit careful with it. Characters do gain XP and level up, which increases their stats as expected. You have your classic attack and defense stats that work exactly like you'd think, but you also have a deval stat, damage value. It says this affects your damage output, but it also says that about the attack stat, so I have no idea which one is more important or how they work. You'll also learn new skills at certain level thresholds, expanding the arsenals of each party member. There is no gear or anything, so levels are one of the only sources of extra power along with the skill tree. Every character has their own skill tree. You get points for it by hanging out with that character after school, and the tree is full of useful things. It has the expected stat ups, but it also has nodes that upgrade their skills with powerful extra effects. It's well worth trying to put points into everyone just to try and transform all their skills into EX versions. One interesting thing the game has going on is the triad system. You have 2 triads that represent a kind of morality system and respond to the choices you make in game. The light triad consists of sympathy, altruism, and morality. The dark triad is Machiavellianism, interestingly enough, narcissism, and psychopathy. I like that it doesn't present either of these as good or evil, and instead focuses on the positive aspects of each one and how you can view a positive world through their lens. You'll gather points in all 6 by making important choices during the story, making dialogue choices and side content, taking a personality quiz at the start of each chapter, and finding little multiple choice events while exploring around school. After they reach a certain threshold, they'll unlock a buff for your party, like sympathy increasing healing. And sometimes extra dialogue choices will appear in certain scenes, depending on which traits are high. You can also choose to walk home with a certain character. Basically, on normal days, you can choose who you walk home with, and most of your party members will be available. So when you walk home with them, you get some points for their skill tree, as well as a cool dialogue scene that teaches you more about them. And you can choose between several different venues to take them. That'll all have different scenes, and it'll mark which ones have new scenes for you, so you always know. And then eventually, if you do this enough, you'll also unlock a special extra scene for each character that appears at the beginning of the next day that does a whole bunch of character development and stuff for them. And there are 5 of those scenes for each character. This is the kind of game that's on a slow burn. Things progress slowly, and depth unlocks slowly. It'll be a while before you have all your characters, but each one plays very differently. Your battle party consists of 3 people. I kind of wish it was 4. Characters not in your active party of 3 won't get any experience at all, which is unfortunate, but underleveled characters receive a huge XP boost to help them catch up quickly. I really like the character designs in this game, especially in their battle forms. It's a cool bit of design that they all use a primarily bright white color scheme, but each has one different secondary color that's prominent in their design. Also, I think that the battle animations and particle effects look nice, and the hits are pretty satisfying for a turn-based system. Overall, Varlet is a game of 2 halves. One half is slow, repetitive, and simple. The other half is vibrant, tactical, and interesting. There's always space for more niche budget RPGs. They often have some neat ideas that their larger AAA brethren don't try. The team that made this is known for that exact thing, trying to overcome their lower budget with cool concepts and odd mechanics. I think this is a successful attempt from them. It does have some fun stuff, and the story and voice acting are actually quite good. I like the story of a developer fighting against the giants of the industry with something much smaller that has a chance to do things a bit differently, and that's the feel I get from this game. I think it evens out to be a solid experience, but you have to go into it with the knowledge that it's a smaller game with the shortcomings of its small-time development. It has some unfortunately repetitive design in places, and might bore you at times when everything is happening super slowly. But if you think you're the kind of person that can get past negatives like that, there's a neat game underneath to be found here. I'd say the full price of this game is a little much. I would recommend most people wait for a sale, and only the most hardcore of niche JRPG explorers that know names like the Caligula Effect and Blue Reflection grab this at full price. I'll put that Steam link below so you can mull it over for yourselves. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you next time.